We talk about mods, pinball mods. It's episode 10. We've got a special guest, and we're live because we're too lazy to edit video, I guess. How's it going, guys?
Hey, Rob. Hey, Davey.
Hey, guys. How's it going? Good to see you both.
Kyle Smet, welcome, coming in from Virginia, and we're excited to have you. How you doing?
No, very well. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to BS about pinball mods, all my favorite stuff. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. Did you get a chance to see that eclipse, the U.S. story of the year yesterday?
Yeah, so in Virginia, it was about 85 to 90% covered. So it looked like Pac-Man right as he was about to eat the ghost. So we didn't get the full effect, but it was still pretty cool. And I was able to bust out of a meeting for about 2 minutes and take a look with my special glasses and then got back in there. So
nice.
It was cool.
Davey, did you even know this was happening for us?
I did, mate, but only because it was the talk of Pinside for about 2 days. And then I read the newspapers as well. I read a bit of US news, so it was on the papers that I read. But unfortunately, nothing in the UK in terms of blotting out the sun. But I don't think I've ever seen an eclipse, so I'm really jealous.
Well, I got to make you a little more jealous. I got to brag a little bit. So I guess the last one, which was like 5 or 7 years ago, I don't know, passed through my hometown, which I live about 2 hours from. And this one passed through it too. Like literally, X marks the spot on my hometown. Got to see the full thing both times. It's amazing. Definitely check it out. I guess the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun. And it's also 400 times closer, and that is why it covers it perfectly.
You've been reading Wikipedia.
What the hell? What the hell was that?
Nobody thought they'd learn anything today.
We've got all the good stuff on the show. Yeah.
Oh, man. So Kyle, we know you. We're excited to have you. We've been talking about this. We skipped our show last time, not because you were joining, but because we were tired. And I know you were tired. TPF was huge. Tell us about what happened there.
Yeah. So first of all, hi, everybody. My name is Kyle. I am nobody. I'm not famous. I am just a hobbyist. So I was able to bring my custom game, Friday 13th, which is a homebrew pinball, to Texas Pinball Fest. I've been working on it for about 1.5 years, and that was my deadline. That was my goal. So anytime you tackle something like this of this scope and size, especially having never done it before, I had to have some kind of end goal in sight. And for me, that was TPF. I got a ton of buddies in Texas. I have a lot of friends in that area. I just thought it'd be fun. I have always gone to TPF, even though I'm in Virginia. So I was able to pull it off.
Yeah, man. The homebrew section, we talked about it on a little special episode that we did. It was popping. There was a ton of amazing stuff. There was a number of machines that really blew everybody away, and yours was, of course, one of them. This is the first time you showed it, or was it?
Yes.
Had it been shown before? Okay.
No, this was my first game. This was the first time it had been out of my basement. So obviously a little anxious. You never know what's going to happen, especially if you put it in a public setting, but it could not have gone better. I had a couple of stuck balls. I had one wire that got desoldered. It took me 10 minutes to solder back, and it was back and running. So it went so well, and I couldn't be more pleased with just how it.
Oh, we've lost him. Oh, back again.
Hit the wrong button. This is what I meant to bring up. So I'm cutting you off, Kyle. We're excited to have you. We're going to talk we got a lot of questions coming at you. Are you still there? Can you hear us?
I am still here. I can hear you.
Awesome.
I'm excited to talk about
that. Awesome. So yeah, Davey and I have lined up a bunch of questions. So we're going to spend a good amount of time going through that. I hope you guys are excited to hear about this machine. And then we're going to talk about some new mods on this show. We've got, of course, some Jaws stuff lined up. Davey's going to show off his latest mod for the Big Lebowski. Maybe tell us, I don't know, something about other stuff he's working on. We're excited for that. And yeah, man. So tell us, at a high level about this machine. Obviously, unfortunately, none of us can buy it. But if we could, what's in this bad boy?
I wanted to throw everything in the kitchen sink in this game, right? So to actually kind of come up with my own game, this has been something I've been thinking about for quite a while. So I've been in the hobby for maybe about 12 years. Bought my first game on Craigslist. It was a F14. I fell in love immediately. So I've owned about 50 games. I worked with a local operator when I was in Shreveport, Louisiana. I was fixed some of his games. He gave me some beer money. So I found that I really enjoyed modding them. I enjoyed fixing them, and I enjoyed restoring them. And I thought, well, where can I go from here? So, hey, let's make our own game, right? So I am a child of the 80s. My dad owned a video store. And when he would have me at his work, he would go and work, and I was behind the counter. And what did I go pick? I would pick Nightmare on Elm Street, Reanimator, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. These are the kind of movies that I grew up on. So how can I combine kind of my love of 80s, sci-fi action horror stuff with my love of pinball? So here you go. So I had no idea what I was doing. I'm not an engineer by background. I had never built a game. So I reached out to a guy named Ernie, who runs Trident Pinball, and he was actually offering kits, which gives you basically a piece of wood, all the mechs you would need, the boards, the computer. But what was worth the money for me was a tech support. So I started drilling into wood. But in my mind, I knew very clearly what I wanted it to look like and what I wanted it to have. I wanted it to be a very traditional layout, very familiar. I wasn't even sure if I could pull it off, right? So I didn't want to get too crazy right off the bat, but I knew I wanted code-wise to put everything I could into this game, all the video games, all the movies, and some voice actors. So one of the things that I think potentially separated my game or kind of made it stand out was that I was able to contact 6 of the original actors from the Friday the 13th series. So 3 guys who played Jason, 2 final girls, and a victim. And the victim was the one who actually narrated my trailer that I released on Friday the 13th. And what that did for me was give the game a certain amount of authenticity and credence. That this is actually centered in that Friday the 13th universe. Even if you're not familiar with the movies, even if you don't like horror movies, 80s, whatever, it allowed me to kind of bring a piece of that in the game. And to me, that was important.
And that's, I think, one of the most amazing things that I discovered when talking to you at TPF was the fact that you'd gotten these original actors to come in to do the voice acting, which just to me just elevates the professionality of that game. But it's an interesting story that you told me about how you actually recorded those actors. You went along to meets and things to actually meet them, and did you just proposition them on the spot to ask them if they would do some voice acting for you? How did you do that?
So I got a couple of the actors over Cameo. Cameo
Okay.
is a website where you go and you kind of solicit guys to happy birthday or, congrats on your retirement. So a couple of them, it took a couple of messages like, wait, what? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Some of them were like, oh, that's effing awesome. I would love to do that. And they were able to kind of help me out. So I was able to link up with Amy Steele and Adrian King. Those are the final girls from parts 1 and 2 at conventions. And I walked up to them and I had my 13-year-old son, hey, can you sign my hat? And oh, by the way, you kind of get your elevator pitched down pretty quick. My name is Kyle. I'm not a weirdo. I'm working on a pinball game. Here it is. Would you mind saying jackpot into my phone? Okay. Jackpot. How was that? Can you give me some more super jackpot? Hit the scoop, hit the ramp. Select the
so you were recording on your phone at a convention.
For a couple of the actors, yes. And then I went through and I cleaned it up and I isolated some of the audio and I was able to put it in the game. And my wife likewise has a call out that's buried in the game as well for just being such a sport about looking at Jason Voorhees for 1.5 years in the basement.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So you're building this thing. I think you said you built it in 1.5 years. Is that correct?
Yes. So go ahead.
Yeah. Any did you think it was going to take that long? I mean, that's an insanely fast as far as I'm concerned for what it is. Did you have any goals where you're like, I'm going to show this at TPF, or what was the timeline like?
So when I did a thread or a build thread on Pinslide, that was a way to kind of self-motivate me because I knew that, again, I needed a goal and I needed some way to kind of track my progress. So TPF was always a goal. It took me 1.5 years, and my goal originally was 1 year. I said 6 months to build, 6 months to code, and that was that. And it was fairly close to that, plus or minus building. There was a lot of areas where I got into some traps and some areas of frustration. I took a lot of walks where I would just reach the dead end and I'm like, I'm done. This was stupid. I wasted all this money. But then I would go for a walk and I would have a moment of clarity and I would come back and I would solve the problem. So before I even began, anybody can start a homebrew, which is one of the great things about homebrew or custom games. Anybody can do it, but not everybody can finish it. But I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth and say you can't finish it unless you start. So I knew that this was something that I wanted to do, and I knew that I wanted a theme that likely nobody could ever tackle. With Friday the 13th, the rights are all over the place. It's a very tricky IP to kind of encapsulate. There's so many movies, there's so many studios, there's video games, there's some contractual disputes between the creators. So I knew that the way that I built the game, probably nobody could ever do it like that. So I sketched out the layout when I was in a meeting, and I knew I wanted to have the Jason mask, and I wanted to have all the movies encapsulated around the mask. That was a centerpiece of the game, and that survived. The only thing that really didn't survive the final product from what I had drawn out was I had the ramps were crossed over like an X, and I thought, oh, cool, Jason X, it'll kind of look like that. But I couldn't get the supports right, so I just kind of made them more traditional ramps. So I went through 4 different play fields.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because in this video, which is your video, it's a little bit older, and I see the mask is cool in the middle, but it's not nearly, what it ultimately became. Playfields, printing those, everything. Like, tell us about the iteration of even that part alone.
So the first playfield that I got, white wood, no art, but I drew a Jason mask with a pencil and some markers that I borrowed from my daughter. Right, I'm like, this is where I want the mask. The next playfield I had clear coated with 2-part auto clear, which I shouldn't have done. It was a giant waste of time because I'm just going to, I adjust inserts and I move some slots around and stuff like that. There is the sketch. That's actually not the first sketch. That is the sketch after the sketch that I made in the meeting, kind of in the margins in between, doodles. But if you take a look at that sketch, it's fairly close to what I have right now. I moved the magnet, and a couple of other slight variations, but that's it. And I had a pretty strong idea of what I wanted in my mind. So the first playfield was just kind of a thin piece of plywood. The second one I'd clear coated. The third one I likewise clear coated, but not with 2-part auto clear, just some acrylic, right? And then what you see in the video is a decal that I commissioned an artist on Fiverr. And he was like the 3rd or 4th guy that I reached out to. The other guys were like, you want to do what? No, I don't even know what that is. No way. And then I finally found somebody nutty enough to go, okay, yeah, sounds good. And he and I kind of worked together. He did not have a familiarity with the franchise, so I kind of showed him in my mind what it was that I wanted, where I wanted things aligned, and it worked out. That was a long and iterative process.
Was he the artist for all of the game, including the cab art?
So the cabinet art, the sides of the cabinet were from a limited edition poster that came with a Friday the 13th Blu-ray collection.
Okay.
The sides on the cabinet were from another artist that I had taken. So I bought some of his work and I'd basically taken a snapshot and kind of cropped it. So the art on the cabinet is not original. The back glass was from another guy on Fiverr that I said, here's what I want. Here's where I want everything framed. And he came back and that was a back glass. I'd worked with somebody else that didn't work out, who was a more established artist. And he's like, talk to me in 6 months. And I did. And I think I kind of got ghosted. So I think
happens to us all, mate. Don't worry.
The Translite right now is kind of a placeholder, but I'm fairly happy with it. But
mate, I think it's great. I think it's really good. I think it sort of really captures that 80s horror vibe. I wouldn't change it. I think it's great.
I mean, the thing that's impressive about this, I mean, you pulled all this together and you obviously pulled off all this technical prowess, which is the most impressive part. But to have like the eye to bring everything together and make it feel like it's all one uniform thing, especially whenever you do it the way that you did it. I mean, like, that doesn't come naturally either as a talent or just making it happen. I mean, how much time did you spend just being like, I want this to be perfect because it looks damn near perfect,
So first of all, thank you. When you take on an endeavor like this, I'm an English major, right? I don't have an engineering background, but I know how to finish a project. And you have to be able to be fairly critical with how you make and achieve milestones. So I knew I was going to finish. I had too much time and too much money invested in this project. It was going to happen. And I had to power through the things that I didn't know how to do. I've never coded anything in my life. I had never wired my own game. I had never worked with a board and Mission Pinball Framework. I had never done any of that. But what you have to be able to do is to be a problem solver, and just really be enamored with the theme that you have. I think with the folks at Stern, AP, JJP, is that you have a designer that may or may not have a choice with their theme, and they may or may not be enthusiastic about it. But that's a job. This was not a job for me. This was something for fun. So I knew if I was going to do it, it had to be a theme that I really connected with, right? So, growing up in the arcade, growing up in the video store, this was a theme that I connected with. So I knew I could see it over the finish line. I just had to power through all the things that I couldn't do. And the things that I legitimately couldn't do, I got a lot of help. I got a lot of code help. There are so many helpful people in the custom game community that helped me. And I'll tell you, one of the great moments for me when I knew I would be able to finish this game was when I got the carousel working. And the carousel is when you actually can start a mode and you go through and you can select the mode that you want. That was such a cool moment for me. I hit the scoop and I'm going through the different movies, and I hit start and the movie started. And I said, holy crap, this is really going to happen. It's now more deeply coded than some 80s Gottlieb games, right? So I know I can get there.
I think the fact that, you mentioned earlier that that it took you about 1.5 years from start to finish. I mean, that alone is a very impressive thing for somebody who's done this before. It's a very impressive thing for the manufacturers who have got teams of people working on these things to finish a game in that amount of time. So, for you, coming from, no background in coding, no background in manufacturing, no background in engineering and wiring, and, it's a very impressive thing. And you mentioned earlier Trident. So did you end up, is this built on the board sets and the stuff that they originally sent you, or did you move on from what they sent you and go in a different direction?
So with any custom game, you have a lot of different options, right? So Trident Pinball is a guy named Ernie, and he offers kits to people like me who I don't know what I'm doing, help me. So there are a couple of different board sets that folks can use. There's Fast, there's P3, there's Cobra. So I used Cobra board for this game, and that's just the board that talks to the PC, that tells all the coils and all the things to engage. Fast is more traditional. Fast is using Labyrinth, and I think some of the upcoming remakes. And Fast is a team. Cobra is a guy. I think for my next game, I'm likely going to use Fast. But again, there are all kinds of different options. Mission Pinball Framework is pretty traditional. There's, I think it's called Skeleton.
Skeleton game, yeah. I think that's what TNA was written in.
Yes. So there are a lot of different ways to do this. So the kit that I got had the Cobra board and a mini PC, which I later upgraded. So really what that kit allowed me to do was just to get started. And I got under the MPF, or the Mission Pinball Framework website, where they kind of tell you how to code. And I immediately had a panic attack. I said, I didn't know how to do this. So I took a walk, right? And then I came back with a fresh perspective, and you just tackle one thing at a time.
So Mission Pinball Framework, for those who sort of aren't initiated with it, is a code structure that essentially sets up all the boilerplate aspects of a pinball machine, like games and players and scores and how to connect to video and those kinds of things. And I guess it can be as simple or as complicated as you like, right, Kyle? So you can set it up just using sort of configuration files, or you can get sort of deeper into the code, which is Python. So did you end up having to get deep into the code, or were you able to do everything through the config files?
So I likely fell into a trap that a lot of other custom builders do, and they say, I want to have a multi-ball where I lock a ball over here, and it's get your flippers working. Get your slingshots working. Okay, now the game can flip, the slingshots are working, get your pop bumpers working. So this is kind of where I came back to basics, and then you go from there. And then you add maybe some music, and then you add a screen. And the cool thing about these kinds of projects is that you can work at your own pace. There is no deadline for anybody who wants to build their own game. You don't have to give yourself a deadline. You give yourself 10 years. You can work on whatever you want, whenever you want. I kind of wanted to incrementally work my way through the game where I wanted everything to mechanically functionally work. And then I had the lights start to interact with the code, and then the screen had to interact with the player. So as you know, as pinball players, you need to viscerally understand what to shoot, because you have to interact with that game. You have to have a light, you have to have some kind of a call out, and you have to have some kind of a screen cue to tell you what to do. And again, as an English major, as a storyteller, I have to have a reason why the ball is interacting with the target. If it's just to score points, that's not the kind of player that I am. So for me, it was important from a narrative perspective that you walk up to this game, I am Jason. I'm here to work my way through all the movies to fight Freddy. That's it. So understanding that, now I have a reason to interact with the targets. Now I have a reason to shoot that spinner, to hit that scoop, to hit that pump upper. It's because I'm trying to achieve a goal towards an end state. That was important to me. And I think a lot of modern games, with several notable exceptions, right? I think Tron is a great example of a game where you're Sam Flynn and you are working your way through the grid to get out of Tronville, right? For my game, you are working your way through the movies to battle Freddy. Yeah. So again, that was just important to me. That was what I had in mind before I even put pencil to paper, but that's kind of how I worked through that problem.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, games that do have that narrative and that sense of progression where, essentially much like a computer game where you're going through stages, and what stage are you up to? And, that storytelling, I think, is so important in a game, and it's what really draws you in. Yeah.
So I'm thinking about my Bond right now, and the lack of story in that game. I mean, I definitely think that's missed in a lot of games now. I mean, you've got a game like Bond that's shooting amazingly. It's 18 on pin side if that matters to you. But I mean, it's as an owner, like you want to, as you go deep in these things and invest 45 minutes in a game like you do in Godzilla. I think Godzilla does a pretty good job of this. Story is really important.
Lord of the Rings as well.
I don't want to miss this huge thing that happened with this game at TPF. So I'll share my story, but I'm kind of curious about your part of it. We're at the end of TPF. They do the awards. Everyone's tired, but we're there to see the results. And I've only been through a couple of these for myself. And they do all these categories, and of course, there's a homebrew category. And interestingly enough, this game that I'm telling everybody about throughout the entire show doesn't even get nominated for an award in this category. What is going on in your head at that moment whenever you don't see your game pop up?
So I will do the typical, nice guy routine. That's not why I brought the game to TPF. I didn't build this game to win awards. I didn't build this game to be the next big pinball thing. I built this game to see if I could do it, so I could enjoy it, and I was hopeful that other people can enjoy it. Having said all that, I was advised by one of the TPF crew right before the awards, and I wasn't, because I honestly didn't know they were going on. He goes, "You need to go to the awards," and I said, "Oh, okay, great." So I go in. I'm like, "Oh, there's a homebrew award. Okay, maybe I'll." And look, this TPF, for whatever reason, I think turned a corner with custom games. There were so many quality custom games, but that shouldn't put anybody off or intimidate anybody to bring their game to a show. That's irrelevant. Having said that, there was a lot of pretty quality custom games. 8 Ball Beyond, Motorhead, Animal House, Beavis and Butthead, Saw. Those were phenomenal. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll get runner up. That would be super cool. And there was 2 runners up, and then the winner, and obviously the winner completely deserved it. And I said, that is super awesome. I'm not going to tear up. It's not a big deal. That's not why I brought the game. But I said, I'll just make it better for next time. I was just happy that the game made it. And then, but they kept going with the awards, and there was, the best restoration, the 80s, 90s. And then it was the best in show. And I shit you not, I legitimately in a million years had no idea that this game was even a contender for this kind of a thing. So
there was so many amazing homebrews, but there was also so many amazing games. I mean, Kerry just chimed in. He had his Earth Shaker, the Whitewater,
gorgeous,
that was there. Like, it blew me away. But I was watching this and I'm like, how? First of all, like, how is he not in the nomination list? And it didn't even cross my mind that even a homebrew could get best of show. I don't know if that's unprecedented, but like, best game of the show, it was, like, in terms of just the effort involved. So congratulations on that. I mean, such a huge honor, and obviously, telling your family and you put in all this time, like, it had to be pretty ecstatic.
So I texted my wife. I'm like, I did not win best homebrew. I won best in show. And she wrote back and said, I have scheduled your hotel at Expo. She did that. So she knows, and I've got a very supportive family, right? I mean, any family that lets their husband, have this kind of crap in their basement certainly has to be supportive. But what a rock star, right? So for her to understand how hard I worked, and everybody who brought a game to that show worked hard and put their blood, sweat, and tears into it. So I was happy to be the first homebrew to have taken best in show. But what that means is that that anybody can do that, right? Anybody can build a game, anybody can bring it to a show, and anybody can win. You just have to have that passion, and you have to be a problem solver, and you have to go on a lot of walks.
Yeah. There were a couple of things that I think really did it. One was, like, the call outs from the actors. Like, it's like, holy shit, like, you put in all this time and you did that. Are you serious? But also, this was not a retheme. Which is a pretty big deal, because, like, any project I've ever considered doing, it's like, obviously I'm thinking I got to start from somewhere, but this was, and it was also cool. Like, you had certain components that were actually from games that people know about, which I think actually really adds to the experience as well.
So, listen, I when I started this game, I said I do not want it to look like a homebrew. And I did not mean that to be a pejorative statement or insult anybody who is creating their homebrew. What I meant by that was I wanted it to have a certain polish, and I wanted it to look like a factory game. What that meant to me was a standard cabinet, was a clear-coated playfield, and ramps and mechs that looked professional. So the components that I used in the game, I kind of kludged from a lot of different manufacturers. I had parts from Kiss, Tron, Terminator, Halloween, Walking Dead, you name it. My left flipper coil has J-pop written on it from Deep Root. And guess what flipper died during TPF?
Oh, no.
Thanks, J-pop. So my point is that I had taken kind of established components from other games, but I definitely wanted my own style. And I had mentioned that I wanted my game to kind of play like a cross between Terminator 2 and Iron Man. It is hard. It is a brutal game, and it's super deep. So I'm going to tweak some of the difficulty for Expo.
So I was reading or listening to your trailer before the show, and reading it on Nap Arcade and stuff. And one of the things that sort of jumped out at me is something that you sort of don't get to pick up much when you go to these shows, because it's so noisy and so intense at these shows. Generally, you just can't hear, unless it's Motorhead, where they like turn it up to like 20, yeah. and then you usually can't hear the sound. But it was mentioned that the music on Friday the 13th was original NES-inspired synth music. So I thought I'd ask you about that. Was the NES your childhood console?
So I was a Sega kid. Okay. I had a Sega Master System.
Cool.
And a Sega Genesis.
We don't judge here.
Yeah, I was not the kid with a Nintendo, but I had a friend who had a Nintendo, so it's all good, with a black and white TV.
Yeah.
The music in the game is all Friday the 13th music with a couple of exceptions. So I do have the Alice Cooper Man Behind the Mask with Crystal Lake Multiball. I do have some Carl Casey Wipeout audio music with some of the Final Girl modes. I love it, Sega Master System. So there's a mode in the game called 8-Bit Attack. 8-Bit Attack was my homage to the Friday the 13th Nintendo game. So my wife's cousin is a musician, and he was able to synthesize the soundtrack from the Nintendo video game, and I put it into 8-Bit Attack. So when you qualify 8-Bit Attack, you have Ari Lehman, who played Jason in part 1, say 8-Bit Attack. Here comes that synth music, and you just are back in the 80s. I have the TV with the Nintendo right there. It's a silly mode. It really doesn't mean anything. You have a ball saver the whole time, but again, just those touch points and that nostalgia factor just sucks you in. The game can be scary, but I just wanted a couple of funny things, right? Funny calls.
Yeah, no, I'm Commodore 64, just so that we're putting all our cards on the table.
Fair enough.
I was actually talking to David Thiel at TPF last year, and I was talking about Pulp Fiction sounds and things like that. But we got onto Commodore 64s, and he's like, "Oh, I did a lot of the music for some of those early Commodore 64 games." And I was like, "Oh, which ones?" He's like, "Oh, I did Winter Games," and I was like, fucking Winter Game. I couldn't believe who I was talking to. I felt like I was just transported back to my childhood. And I think for a certain era of gamer, those old school, crunchy bit sounds just appeal in a way that that nothing else does. And so when I saw that, I was really excited to, and I'm just a pity that I didn't get to hear it at TPF, and that's one of the problems with shows, isn't it? The sounds.
I never really left the arcade. I never really left my dad's video store. So this is in some small way just kind of brings that piece back.
Yeah.
So when I was playing the game, one of the things that stood out to me was the display. And one of the reasons that stood out to me is because a lot of games these days, I feel like they're getting shipped without a lot of polish in that area. I'll talk about Bond again. Like when you go in to put your initials, they just use the same initial screen they used on like Aerosmith, which was their first Spike 2 game. You play spooky games, and frankly, there's just not a lot of text animations in some cases where you're like, I hope they're polishing that. I don't know. I pay attention to that. Your stuff, did you hire people to do text animations too? Or did you do that yourself? The depth of detail you did here was just astounding, even down to that level.
So that was me. MPF, you have the ability to incorporate text into some of your widgets and videos and stuff like that, but it wasn't really cutting the mustard. So I reached out to Ernie, the guy that I bought the kit from, and we're kind of talking. He's like, "Have you tried this program called CapCut?" And CapCut is basically for TikTokers or whatever, and they can splash all kinds of funny text. So I tried that, and that was what clicked for me. So I was able to incorporate in the base screen some of those VHS glitches and distortions that when you put in that VHS tape and it just sucks and the scanning's all off. I wanted that. I wanted to have some kind of cool text effects for all my different modes. So that took me a while, but that was the fun part. Doing text and audio was fun. Trying to figure out how to unscrew my multi-ball because it's not working the way I want was not fun. There were some frustrating components. To do the audio and the text was super fun, but I'll tell you, it was a lot. It's 12 movies and 2 video games. I had to watch a lot of Friday the 13th, and I had to organize all these clips, and I didn't want, just a bunch of violence in the game, right? If you turn on the game and just somebody's getting killed, that only takes you so far. So I wanted to have some of that stuff, but at the same time, incorporate some fun stuff. And when you see text, kind of splash across the screen, that really kind of pulls you into the moment.
So you've got a full-time job, you've got a basement you're working on this probably. Apparently you have a living room where you're constantly watching movies. What is going on with your family here? Are they just shaking their heads every time they see you, or what?
Exactly what dad's working on Jason again. So I had the game in my basement, and it was up in the main living room for a long time. So my wife is a normal person in that she doesn't watch Friday the 13th. I don't know why. So we'd have like parties and get-togethers, and people would come in. Oh, how's it going? And she'd be like, "Please excuse the giant Freddy game or whatever that my dumb husband is working on. Just like put a blanket over it." But at the same time, she knew that this was important to me, and she saw the level of effort. So she, to her credit, only rolled her eyes at a minimum amount of times. Right. My kid, I have 3 kids. My youngest son was the one who probably helped me out the most. Right. I would say, "Hey, Owen, come here. I'd look at this cool thing." And he'd see the multi-ball or the clip that I had. And he's like, "Dad, why don't you try this thing?" And a lot of times it worked. And I think he just wanted to watch a lot of the Friday the 13th movies, to be honest, to help me research, the game.
So we talked a little bit about TPF being a bit of a watershed moment for homebrew in a lot of ways. There's been a lot of buzz. There was a lot of buzz at the show. There's been a lot of buzz since the show. Spence, another podcaster in the UK, and myself did a whole show on all the homebrews on a UK podcast a week or so ago. When he called me up to sort of talk about, do you have any ideas for a show or whatever, I just sort of started talking about TPF, and the homebrews was the first thing that came to my mind when I started talking about the show in general. Wasn't necessarily pushing it as a show idea, but as soon as I started going through, the games that were there, Aaron from Fast and the conversations that we'd had and the ideas that he was having around bringing homebrews potentially to market on a wider scale, it was all just really exciting stuff. And immediately he sort of jumped on that and wanted to do a show about it. So I think his reaction was sort of indicative of everybody's reaction to where homebrew is at the moment. Obviously, not just. I think sometimes we get stuck just talking about the games that were at TPF, but obviously there's a much wider homebrew scene full of people that, as you mentioned earlier, like really support each other, and, the information sharing is really great and strong. But did you, obviously you were manning the game a lot of the time, make sure that, posts weren't failing and the flippers were working and stuff. Did you get much of a chance to go and play the other games?
No.
Not at all.
I was a nervous dad watching their kid at a recital, hoping that the kid would remember the routine and not fall. That I typically go to TPF to eat a bunch of really bad for me food, to drink a lot of overpriced beer, and to hang out with my friends. I was able to do 2 out of 3 of those things. Really kind of under the guise of me babysitting the game. I was able to check out a couple of the newer games. But Ernie from Trident Pinball said it best during.
I think he's in the chat actually today.
Okay. Hi, Ernie. He said it best. The level of polish and effort in these games was just next level. But we need to be cautious that we're not pushing anybody out or intimidating anybody or making somebody feel like they shouldn't bring their project to a show because it doesn't have a clear-coded playfield, because Tom Cruise didn't narrate the entire game themselves. Like custom games, homebrew games, this is fun. The intent of this whole thing is for fun. It's great that a couple of homebrew guys have been picked up, Scott Denisi, Ryan McQuaid. That's awesome. But that's really the exception, I think, and not the rule. You bring your game as a passion project for yourself, whether it's Friday the 13th or whether it's Saw or whether it's Motorhead or whether it's Tom and Jerry or whatever you connect with as a person. So the level of polish was great. I think it's going to continue to be a thing, but I'm hopeful that other folks will bring their own game, regardless of where it's at.
Yeah, and I think that the success of this one particular show will only increase the exposure of homebrew as a thing that people can do. And alongside that, as the technology improves and becomes more accessible to regular people, I guess, like yourself, who might not have had coding background or engineering background, as it becomes more accessible and more people can make these games, we should expect to see, more and more games being produced. And I hope that's the case, and shows the homebrew section will just be bigger, and that will encompass games with the level of polish that we might have seen at TPF, but then also the ones that are the up and comers and that are going to be there in a year's time or 2 years' time.
Yeah. And then, Davey, I'll tell you that I think part of that polish is because there has never been a better time to get into custom game builds. The amount of boards that are available, the code support, and we are literally standing on the shoulders of people who helped us to get here. I can't code anything. Somebody built Mission Pinball Framework for me to use. Somebody it is able to design some of these mechs that I'm using. So this is a great time to be in the hobby.
I mean, even just the fact that, you know, Aaron is like right next to the homebrew section at all the shows, you know, I mean, I think that's a wonderful thing. You know, I think that him and all of the other guys that are sort of, you know, putting these boards out there and making them available to people, you know, they are available. They're available on Discord, you know, they're available on email. They respond to messages, you know, they're there to help people through that process. And, you know, that's a wonderful thing.
I was so lucky to be in such close proximity to Aaron Davis with Fast Pinball. I had never met him before, and we became pretty quick friends. What a great ambassador for the hobby, for pinball. I can't wait to get started on I'm started on game number 2, and it will be with Fast. Yeah,
I'm a massive fan of Aaron as well, man. We've been chatting for a couple of years off and on. And, you know, every time I see him at a show, you know, I always go up and have a chat, and, you know, just the level of, you know, excitement and energy that he is able to bring to the table for every conversation that he has with people is just unbelievable. I don't know how he does it, to be honest.
He has an energy level that's just unsurpassed, and what a nice dude, right? What a nice guy. So I'm so thankful to have touched base with him.
Well, Kyle, we're excited to hear about what you're working on next, and we're going to ask you about that shortly. One question before we move on to our general programming. We're going to cover some mods, and we want to hear kind of what you think about some of the cool stuff that's coming out. But if you were to fast forward 5 years from now, which obviously, like, pinball and the homebrew scene is going to evolve significantly, as well as any marriage between those two evolving any further than it is. And you talked about that a little bit. I mean, do you have, you know, hopes for what, you know, precedent you're pushing forward and what's happening, and what would you like to see as far as the manufacturers and the homebrew coming together in any way?
Yeah. I will defer to something that George Gomez said that really stuck with me. He is an incredibly creative and collaborative leader. And what he told his team was, as they're making their game, he goes, the flippers are sacred. Everything else, do what you want to do. Right. To me, that means that there is a basic level of what pinball means, and you can grow from there, but don't get away from what pinball really means. Pinball isn't, okay, now the flipper buttons are up here and you need a video game controller to operate this cannon that's going to come out of here. So it should always be pinball since the early days of when there weren't flippers, when you launched the ball and they fell down pins. So I'm hopeful in the next 5 years that more and more folks build custom games, because there's never been a better time. I am hopeful to see the homebrew section build, because I think TPF 24 showed a lot of industry folks, showed a lot of consumers, showed a lot of hobbyists what is possible. You know, as far as the traditional manufacturers, JJP, Stern, AP, Spooky, they should continue to build great games, and I think they're doing that. When you hear the enthusiasm from the folks at Spooky, it's infectious. They're giddy with what they have, and they want to show you right now, but of course they can't until they have a final product. And I know Stern is the same way. So I don't expect any revolutionary changes in pinball. It's such a fun hobby, and it's too bad that sometimes it kind of can, you know, get a little sideways with some shady characters, right? We know what we're talking about, but I just want to see it grow. Custom pinball, especially, what a great time, and I can't wait to see what folks have built in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, talent in pinball is not a commodity. all three of us, contribute to it, and we want to celebrate that. I mean, big shout out to all the homebrew guys. I know that I've enjoyed playing them all. They're all in different states. Great games made by manufacturers are in different states based on how well they're kept up. That's the joy of pinball. But I just want to celebrate everybody that's out there that's creating, and definitely keep it up. So we want to get back to what you've got coming up next. But Davey has lined up his typical list of mods we're going to talk about. So Davey, you want to give us a little rundown on what's out there?
Sure, man. Sure, yeah. So, it wouldn't be an In Before the Lock show if we didn't primarily focus on Jaws mods, which has been kind of like all we've been doing in terms of new mods. But that's what's getting released at the moment. So that's why we've been focusing on them. But probably the biggest news in mods for the last couple of weeks has been Interactive Pinball. Trent from Interactive Pinball announced his new ball eat mod, which was the premium version of the mod, and you can see that he has managed. So this I should feel bad about this because I said he was never going to be able to do this. Let me just
You said that.
that I am eating humble pie. He's made it happen. So I think he's using the same sculpt as he is on the Pro. So missing the lower jaw, turned the shark into like a gobble hole. He's kept the bash target sort of aspects of the original shark, and then replicated the sort of the gobble hole to fast VUC, I think he calls it, fast for UK, to then spit it out the back. And we haven't actually worked out sort of how he's managed that, whether he's got a staged ball under there, but it's certainly super quick. So when it gets munched, it comes down that back ramp really quickly. And like the Pro version, he's also, disabling those ramp switches. So he's not getting counts for things that aren't happening. So yeah, look, he's done a fantastic job of it. He's put it through its paces. He says that he's tested it in arcades and stuff, and it's holding up well. So, let me just be the first person to say that he completely proved me wrong. I still don't know what the install's like yet. I'm a little bit scared, how much is getting ripped out and then what the level of install difficulty is going to be for people, particularly with people who don't have huge experience with pulling apart their pinball machines, but he's managed a lot more than I thought he was going to be able to, and I think he's done a fantastic job of that. So we should all be very impressed with that.
Kyle, how long have you had your Jaws?
Oh man, late February. This was a dream theme for me. Jaws is my favorite movie. Half of my game room that you can't see is Jaws stuff. I told Zach from Flipping Out, I think 2 years ago, I said, dude, Jaws Ellie, write my name down. And to his credit, he did. And I've never paid so much for a pinball machine, but it won't be leaving.
So dream theme, you've had it for 4 or 6 months. Do you care about the ball being 8 anymore?
Nope. I am a modder. I love mods. I've got mods in all my games. I haven't really modded Jaws, and I have no desire to see him eat the ball. And I mean no disrespect to anybody who wants the shark to eat the ball. It's your game. You rub it in peanut butter and marry it. Whatever.
Rub it in peanut butter.
That's a great idea for a mod. I'm going to write that down quickly.
I get 10%, Davey.
Did George Gomez say something about peanut butter and pinball whenever you talked to him as well?
He did, but I signed an NDA and I can't talk about it.
Okay, good to know. Barbecue is a thing, though.
Okay, so our lovely friend Jimmy Lipham from 86 Pixels. So we did a show with Jimmy a couple of weeks ago, and in that show he mentioned that he was going to be bringing a new product to Texas for the show, which is essentially a Pin Stadium killer, I think you could probably call it. It's essentially it's the same sort of product as Pin Stadium, just a lower price point, more interactivity or greater degree of interactivity, or whatever you want to call it. Jimmy announced it at TPF, had on a couple of games there. They all looked amazing. The games there looked phenomenal. Got to have a good chat with Jimmy as well. It's the first time we've actually met in person. And it was great to see the product being released. It's getting a lot of attention on Pinside. Jimmy's been very responsive with the feedback and explaining things. I wish him all the best with it. It looks like a great product, and I'm sure it's going to do really well with it. To be honest, like the tone of the posts that people are putting on his thread, people have been waiting for an alternative so I'm not pulling up many great pictures here. Been waiting for an alternative to pin stadiums for a while. So, I think he's going to get a lot of attention for these, and it'd be interesting to see sort of how they progress. They've got really good architecture coverage, I think. So he's got solutions for Spike and for SAM and for WPC games and a whole bunch of other architectures as well, I believe. Keep an eye on them.
So, Kyle, are you a Pin Stadium guy?
No.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah, I've got to say I'm not either, but I've never tried them, never tested them on any of my games, and I'd like to consider Jimmy's just to give them a shot and to see how they play. Right, so on to John from Precision Pinball. I don't know whether you guys are aware of John's product. We've talked about his stuff on the show lots before. John is an ex-aeronautical engineer. He does a lot of aluminium machining as well as a bunch of other metal machining, I think. And he's most famous for his flippers, which have been, up until probably recently, the best solution for getting less flipper fade in your games, particularly JJP games, Guns N' Roses and games like that, which were known for having quite sloppy flippers. They were the best way of getting more power into those flippers by reducing the amount of give and leeway that a flipper and the bushing has, by reducing those tolerances and getting them to be, to behave in a much more sort of, mechanical and methodical way. So he's just released a spinner, a new reel spinner for Jaws, that is both the bushing itself that goes, that houses the central spinner unit, and for the reel unit itself, which you see there. He sort of mentioned these before, TPF. I was trying to hit him up for a set at Texas. Have any on hand? And he's just announced that they're in his shop now. And they look great. So I'll be interested to see, how they perform. There's been a little bit of pushback on them because people are sort of coming back saying that the fishing reel is supposed to be hard to shoot. It's by design. It's supposed to feel like a battle, like reeling a fish in. Sometimes the reel's not, sometimes the line's not taut, et cetera, et cetera. I kind of see those arguments as well. But, there's nothing like hitting a horizontal spinner and seeing it like, really spin like anything. So, yeah, I've not played enough games on Jaws to really know whether the reel annoys me or not. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you guys think.
I gotta pull up this comment because I love to talk about Davey's fan on his Foo Fighters.
I'm so
That's a
sorry.
vacuum cleaner. That's not a fan.
He makes mods, but he apparently doesn't know how to install them. So
Okay, so has anybody who has have you guys installed like the quiet fans? Pinmonk.
they're a bitch. They're a bitch.
They're a bitch, man. They're so hard to change out. This isn't a slide on Pinmonk. It's not his product.
No.
It'll take you one beer to switch out the fan.
That's one beer, man. I could be enjoying that beer.
You do a quiet fan on a spooky game, and let's talk about the Pinmonk on a Stern. Good Lord.
Is it a lot harder on a spooky game, is it?
Speaking of precision flippers, I put the bushings on my Lebowski recently, and it's awesome. Like that Walter ramp. This is just me and you talking here, Davey. Like I'm pitching you. You got it. You got to get him. It just goes right up there. All right, let's keep going.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Okay. So this is what I mentioned to Kyle earlier. He was asking me about a helicopter. Sorry, what game was it you were asking the helicopter for?
Batman 66.
Batman 66.
Not
Yeah.
you, but I like your stuff too.
Yeah. I'll just take credit for it. I don't care. Yeah, that was great. It was awesome.
Yeah.
This is by Pinot Pinball Mods from France. He's done a bunch of other mods before this one. This is a helicopter for Jurassic Park. Now, I think it's probably one that he's probably repurposed from a toy or something like that. But it is interesting in the sense that he has hooked it up to some quite interesting electronics in the sense that it's got variable speed rotor. I think it can be triggered by in-game switches as well. So there's a fair level of interactivity that he's got with this. And yeah, it's seeing a bit of action. I think he's got 30 on the list so far. So that's an interesting one for JP. We're not seeing many JP mods come out of the woodwork anymore. So it's interesting to see a new one come out that's not Jaws related. Any comments on that one, guys, or should we just move on?
I miss my Jurassic Park, and I'm upset that you brought it up.
That's why I brought it up, man. I just shed a tear of disbelief. Right, so this is C Arcade's Chris has been doing mods for probably a little over a year. Really highly skilled designer. He must have, I haven't spoken to him about it actually, but he must have come from sort of a design industry. He's got some really great 3D skills. He did a bunch of things for Foo Fighters, and then moved on to Venom after that. Did some things for Venom and is now working on Jaws stuff. He released I think what he calls it a playfield set, which was slingshots, and inlane plastics that had sort of been redesigned to be 3D, and a bunch of shooter rods as well. This is the latest evolution of his shooter rod. I think he's got another one than this one, but I think this is the latest version of it. And I mean, just really great paint and sculpt work. I think, every time I see his stuff, I'm like, oh God, I wish I knew how he got that result with his stuff. I mean, just really beautiful paint work around the mouth, and and just, I mean, look, I'm not a shooter knob guy. I like my shooter knobs to be traditional. So I never end up going down the route of shooter rods. Do you guys ever go for themed shooter rods?
Yeah, I'm in the similar. I wanted to kind of. I'm really sensitive to how it comes off my fingers. We're getting really weird here with this conversation. We should probably move on.
Yeah, that's what I thought I'd
Kyle's over there shaking his head. Yeah.
This is not what I signed up for, guys. Come on.
Nah, it's not for me. But look, I mean, I'm always really impressed with the work that he does, and there's obviously a big market for themed shooter rods because people keep making them, so they must be selling. So I know a lot of people must be buying them. Right, so moving on to my good friend Andrew Vimterman. He's just come out. So Andrew's been around for ages. I was speaking to Kyle about him earlier. Kyle, you've got his mods for Halloween, is that right?
Halloween and Alien, yep.
Yeah. So Andrew's a lovely guy. He's my go-to dude when I need to ask like an esoteric like circuit board question. He's much more electronically proficient than I am. I think he's come from the lighting industry or something like that. So, whenever I sort of, ask him about, how to get rid of, potential for, static problems on boards or over voltage protection or anything like that, he's the guy that I ask. So, his stuff's always really electronically focused. And this is the latest mod that he's just announced for Batman 66. It's a really cool siren. You can see it there that sits on the front of the crane. I think there's various configurations that you can have this in. You can have it, I think, pointing towards the front like that. You can have it pointing up, and a bunch of different colors as well. and I think he's selling it for like 60 quid or something. So look, if you own a Batman 66, that's got to be a no-brainer if you ask me. Yeah, I think it's a great looking thing.
Yeah,
And
kudos on that. That looks great. It just an example of like, how's that not already there? Which is always the best case for a mod.
Yeah, and I'm always really excited to see sirens, siren effects. It's something that I've tried to put into my mods before, and you can generally do it just by having like a circle of LEDs and just creating a pattern that sort of moves them around, and then then some kind of way to obscure them, I guess, with a bit of top resin or something like that. But I'm actually not sure whether Andrew has used an off-the-shelf thing here, whether you can buy bulbs or whatever that just can do that effect. But it is a really great effect. And I hope he sells a bunch of these because it's a great price point, and I think if you had a Batman 66, it's a no-brainer.
So we're running out of time. Davey, what are you working on?
What am I working on? Yeah, right. So
it's in the agenda. We got to hit it.
Yeah, look, a couple of people mentioned in the comment section earlier that they thought this might be Davey announcement day, which is very lovely that anybody's even thinking about that. And I truly, truly appreciate it. It's not announcement day, but I'm going to try and aim for 2 weeks' time to announce the Boy of Death, or Buoy of Death, as you say in the States. It's not quite ready yet. I've had a bunch of problems with a bunch of parts that require that they be reprinted and resent, and that all takes time. But what I can show is one that most people probably would have already seen if they're paying attention to the mods that I've been releasing, and that's the new one that we've done for the Big Lebowski, which is called the Hollywood Star Lanes mod. It's a 4-piece sort of neon resin sign that goes up on the upper play field of the Big Lebowski, and it's meant to replicate the Hollywood Star Lanes neon sign, the iconic sign that's now in the defunct. That was the sign for the defunct bowling alley that was used in the Big Lebowski filming. So let me quickly, I can show the video. So it's got a bunch of different sections. I'm using these tiny 1mm LEDs in each of the signs to light them up in that way, and the LEDs follow the pattern of the wording outline there. Each of the sections is individually triggerable. You can choose which triggers, like whether it's the switch or the loop shot or the let's go bowling lamp. Each one of those can be sort of played with to trigger different parts of the sign and have different patterns and things like that. And I guess like all my mods, it's all configurable over Wi-Fi. You can change the colors to your liking and have a nice old time with it.
Fantastic work on that. I'm super excited. I got the Vento Man little thing above the scoop,
which is great, isn't it? Yeah,
it's great. It's super easy to install. It looks great. It doesn't distract from the game, and yours is great. Other than I have to get rid of something I already bought. Thank you. But hey, it happens. So Kyle pulled a preview out of you before we started the show. Kyle, how excited are you for what he's got coming for Jaws?
So I don't want to spoil anything, but Davey was able to show me what he was working on, and I cannot believe that you have a real shark as part of this mod.
Baby shark. I don't
know how you feed it. I don't know how it swims, but it's super impressive.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, it was getting around the environmental protections that was the most complicated bit.
It is impressive. It is not that. All right, Kyle. So you're working on something else, allegedly, right? What are your kids going to call it? Give us a hint.
I can't tell you what my kids are going to call it. I told my son, I go, this is it. And he goes, okay. I told my wife, and she goes, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
It's great.
Okay. So it's not a horror. It's not a horror thing then, obviously.
So I have 5 hints, right? And the cool news is that nobody cares because I'm not famous. I'm just a dude working on a thing in his basement. Nobody cares. But it is not a horror theme. I didn't want to be a horror guy after Friday the 13th, right? Hint number 2, it is based on an 80s movie. Again, I talked about growing up in the video store and in the arcade. It is based on an 80s movie. Number 3, it is an all original layout, just like Friday the 13th, right? That's not a retheme. Number 4, I have signed a well-known pinball artist to do my art for my game. So I commissioned somebody who's pretty well-known. The budget for this game is outside of what I had for game number 1, primarily because of the art, but I think it's going to be worth it in the end. And then number 3, I hope to unveil it at Expo next year, which gives myself another year and a half to kind of work it out. I think the code is going to be a lot quicker this time because I can take some of the bones that I had for Friday the 13th and transfer it. But this game, I can't believe nobody's done it. I'm so excited about it. I really connect with it. I reached out to the artist. I explained to them the theme, and they are likewise super excited about it as kind of a dream theme for this person. So I can't wait to show it off. I did a build log for Friday the 13th. I kind of walked everybody through what I was doing. I'm not going to do that for this game. I'm just going to drop it. Here you go. Here it is.
Yeah. Awesome. Lots of good stuff. Where can we play Friday the 13th this year? You got anything coming up?
I am non-committal for the show in Pennsylvania. I forgot what it's Penn Fest,
Allentown.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hope to bring it there.
Pinburg.
Thank you. I hope to bring it there. I am non-committal. It will definitely be at Expo this year. It will be in Chicago this year. I'm looking forward to that. And I'll hopefully have a couple of the problem areas fixed where I can not just kind of stand back and watch my kid at a recital, but really go and eat some more bad for you food and hang out with my buddies and drink some overpriced beer.
But you mentioned that you're going to be in Expo.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll see you there.
Absolutely. No, and I'll bring my shark for my Jaws machine and say what happened to it. It just went belly up. Now it doesn't move. I want my money back.
Well, Kyle, you're probably finally catching some air. Thank you for coming on the show with us. Keep up all the hard work. Super impressive stuff. We love seeing your work. So come and check it out at Expo and maybe some other spots. We're going to wrap it up, guys. Thank you for hanging out with us, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks. We're going to get back to our regular scheduled Monday. No plans yet, but again, Kyle, thank you, and Davey for staying up so late. We love it.
Thanks, Rob and Davey.
Thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.
All right.
See you next time.